quickly, without looking at your bulletin, who can tell me what the title of this sermon is? Oh, good. Oh, good. Well, that's not exactly it. It's no time to those, but that's close enough. The scripture in the message this morning is based on the idea from Jesus that we should be warned to be alert. As he was warning his disciples, we too should be alert for his second coming. As the beautiful song of the choir sang, it's hard to look past the infant child to the cross. It is even more difficult to look past the cross to that uncertain day in the future when Jesus will come again. And that's what really Advent is all about. It's not so much Jesus as the baby. It's Jesus, the Redeemer, who comes to redeem us and to take us to be with him. And as I was thinking about this sermon about getting prepared, being alert, to stay watchful, I was reminded of my freshman year at the University of Texas when I had 3 finals in one day. And I was fortunate, I got one of them removed, but the schedule still was a mess. And I found myself having to study for my algebra final the night before, which is not what you'd call being alert and being prepared. So somebody gave me, maybe for 50 cents, one of those stimulants. I don't remember what the name was, but it was green, I think, or yellow, I'm not sure. So I took that stimulant, and it seemed to be doing its work. You know, I got all through the night. I got the material covered. I got halfway through the final. I got 2/3 the way through the final, and then, bam! I just crashed. I don't think I did very good on the last third, but I managed to scrimp by with a C, and I was probably pretty lucky. I would have been much better off if I had been prepared in advance. If I had been alert enough to do what was necessary and not wait till the last minute. Now, if you're looking at a slow study, you would have thought I would have learned. That was the first semester. It wasn't until my junior year that I finally got with the program. It was so bad during my sophomore year, I was on scholastic probation, affectionately known among those who've been on it as School Pro. And I was in the second semester, and I was taking a physics exam. I was on scholastic probation because I failed organic chemistry. And it wasn't even close. I didn't even bother to take the final out. It was so bad. So here I am on my physics final, and I come, as it turns out, within 1 point. 1 point lower, and I would have flunked out of Texas. I did learn something from that experience. And I learned to get prepared in advance, and my grades, for you who have to go through this, were much better off after I learned to do everything in advance and get it taken care of. Difficult lesson. Our text this morning is part of a 2-chapter segment on apocalyptic or end times in Matthew's Gospel. It's chapter 24, which our text is part of, and then chapter 25. And throughout these 2 chapters, what Jesus is doing is warning the disciples and you and me. You better be listening no matter how young you are, instead of playing video games or looking at your iPhone or texting somehow. Nobody does that in here while I'm preaching, do they? I'm not looking up for your response. And so in this season of Advent, what we should be doing is getting prepared for, being alert to Jesus' second coming. I mean, we're tied up with the joys of the season. We've got that little baby Jesus in the manger. We've got the hustle and bustle of the perfect gift to buy and everything to be just wonderful for the family when they come to visit, or getting ready as we used to do, load up the kids and get that U-Haul thing at the top, put all the gifts in and drive 300 miles. By the time you got to Christmas, you're so tired you remember why you were there. We've got all that stuff going on. But it gets worse. You know, we're so preoccupied with the earthly future of getting ahead, having enough, making sure that we can get by, that we don't think about our spiritual future. I mean, it's been a long time since Jesus is supposed to come. He's not here yet. I don't know about you, but he should come anytime.
Come on.
But but none of us know when. And now let's take a look at our text so we can learn a few things. The first thing we learn in verse 36 is nobody knows. Jesus doesn't know. The angels don't know. You and I don't know, and I don't care who else is trying to prophesy about the future. Nobody else knows except the Father. Amen. Only God the Father knows, and it'll be in His own good time. So that's one thing to get out of it. The second thing has to do with examples of what things will be like. Well, we have this example from Noah. You remember way back in Genesis. The Lord looks down and everything's pretty wicked, and He decides He's going to wipe everybody out except this one righteous dude named Noah and his family. And so Noah does what? He spends 100 years building an ark. And you would have thought his neighbors, who were probably dying laughing at him for all this time, would have asked him, "What are you doing this for?" And found out that the earth was going to be wiped out because of the people's wickedness. And perhaps they might have changed. I mean, they had 100 years. Is that enough time? Should be enough time. But apparently they did not get the message, because it started raining for the very first time. You remember the only water had come up through the ground, so it was the first rain, and it flooded the earth, and everyone was wiped out except Noah and his immediate family and 2x2 animals. The people did not prepare for the flood. They did not change, and they were lost. And then we have the second example. First, the men in the field. One will be taken, one will be left. Then we have the women grinding at the mill. One will be taken, one will be left. There'll be no indication for you or for me or for you kids up in the balcony when that's going to happen. But it is going to happen. It will happen. Jesus does give a couple of warnings. First at verse 42, and I put this in 3 different translations. The NRSV, the New Revised Standard Version, says, "Keep awake." The NIV says, "Keep watch." And the New American Standard Bible says, "Be alert." But you get the idea that we should be on our toes. We should be on our toes. We should be watchful. Why? Well, Jesus says, you don't know the timing of the Lord's return. Then he goes on in verse 44 to give another warning. And again, the 3 translations from the NRSV. "Therefore you also must be ready." The NIV, New International Version. "So you must be ready." And then the NASB, "You be ready too." You get the idea of the importance of being ready. Somebody say yes so I can go on. Now, what Jesus is talking about is not being physically ready. We can't stay alert 24 hours a day. No no-dos or Red Bull or any other energy drink is going to have enough caffeine to possibly keep you awake. I think the record for being awake the longest is like 256 hours, which I think was 11 days according to Guinness. But you know, they took that record out. They thought it was too dangerous, so they don't do that. You're only going to be able to stay awake maybe 10 or 11 days at best. What about the rest of your life? How do you stay awake? Well, Jesus doesn't give us, in our text, examples of what we should be doing to stay alert. And what he's talking about, of course, is being spiritually alert. Spiritually alert and prepared. Well, in the rest of chapter 24 and chapter 25, he gives us what I call 3 parable hints and a judgment hint. 3 parables, 1 judgment. In 24, verses 45 to 51, we have the parable of the faithful and the unfaithful slave. You'll remember that story. The master went away and put one slave in charge of feeding the others. And when he returned, he found that that slave had done exactly what he was supposed to. So he was rewarded. One of the slaves failed to do what he should have done and was punished. Then we have the parable of the 10 bridesmaids. Back in Jesus' day, and I think it's even true in the area of Jerusalem and Palestine today, you don't know exactly when the bridegroom is coming to the feast and the festival. And there are bridesmaids who are supposed to be ready. They're supposed to be standing outside, and they didn't have flashlights with ever-ready batteries. They had lamps of oil. And so the word finally goes out to the 10 bridesmaids, the bridegroom is coming. 5 are wise, and they have sufficient oil to burn in their lamps. 5 are unwise, they are not prepared, they are not alert. They didn't know exactly when he was coming. And the difference is the 5 who were prepared, who were alert, were invited into the banquet. See that as a metaphor for heaven. And the 5 who were not prepared were not invited in. So they went elsewhere. And then we had, that was chapter 25, verses 1 through 13. And then we have the final hint. This is the parable of the talents. As a kid, I just couldn't get this. A master has 3 servants. He gives 5 talents to one, 2 to a second, and 1 to a third, and says, take care of this money while I'm gone. And he returns and he finds that the one who had 5 had invested it and had made 5. So he had a total of 10. Now that's what I call being alert and prepared. The second one had 2, doubled his money by investing it, and he had 4. In both situations, the master was pleased and said, I will make you caretakers of even greater things than what I just entrusted you with. But the guy who got 1, I'd like to think of him as everyman. So I know you're a pretty harsh guy. So I didn't want to lose what you gave me, so I just buried it in the ground. Which is not what the Lord had in mind. Because that was not using what he'd been given and had the ability to do with it wisely. And so Scripture says, loosely paraphrased, he gave what he had to the first servant and kicked the guy out. And we might say probably into darkness. And then we have what I think is the best hint of all. It's the judgment hint. It's among my favorite scriptures. It's Matthew chapter 25, verses 31 through 46. It's the story of the sheep and the goats. Now I know we're in goat country here, but in the context of spiritual things and Jesus, you don't want to be a goat. You want to be a sheep. And you'll remember that story. Because the difference was if you were a sheep, you got to get into heaven. And if you were a goat, you went to that other place, probably near College Station.
I wonder if I can hit him with a pencil. I wonder if I can hit him with a pencil from here. Worth it.
You remember what the sheep did. They fed the hungry. They gave a drink to the thirsty. They invited the stranger in. They clothed the naked. They took care of the sick, and they went to prison and visited people. And Jesus said, when you did it to one of these, the least of my brothers, you did it to me. Welcome and enter into my Father's kingdom. And then we have those who ended up being goats because they did none of these things. So they not only failed to do them to those in need, but they failed to do them, therefore, to Jesus. Because when we see someone in need, we should see Jesus. Let me repeat that. When we see someone in need, we should see the opportunity to see Jesus. So it's much better to be a sheep than a goat from a spiritual perspective. Amen. And then finally we have in Matthew 22 verses 36 through 38 the great commandments. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, your mind, and your soul. And the second is like unto it, to love your neighbor as yourself. So this Advent season and for the rest of your life, let me encourage you to prepare for Jesus' coming, His second coming, by giving of yourselves to help those in need, including your time, your talent, and your attention, as well as your money. Now, I've talked a little bit about Andy Ivins, and I want to use Andy one more time. At his funeral a week ago Saturday, 9 people got up and said wonderful things about Andy and how he gave up his time, his presence, his attention to make a difference in their lives. Counted not one person got up and said, well, I want to thank Andy for giving me that wonderful, whatever that physical gift. It was because Andy had given of himself.
Amen.
One of the problems we have, our children and grandchildren today, we are so busy. We are so busy, it's difficult for us to give of our time and attention and our presence, our focus to our kids. And so what do? They go off looking at other things, many of which are not helpful or even safe. Where do you spend your time, your talent, and your attention? Now let me harken back to that advance for the Philippines. Let me again encourage you to forego at least one gift per family member and take that savings and give it to the United Methodist Church Committee on Relief. Specifically that number that's in the bulletin for the Philippines. Last year, this congregation and the church in London gave over $13,000 to build water wells in Africa. We built at least 2 where they have clean drinking water. Think of the good that has done. Think of the good that will help with this money go to help those in the Philippines. I would like to encourage you not to get caught up, and I guess I get more cynical about this the older I become. I thought somebody would say something. Don't get caught up in the mindless gift giving that will never really ever help someone to come to know Jesus.
Amen.
Or will help draw someone closer to Jesus. You know, I don't think they have catalogs in heaven. I don't think you're going to be able to stand up and St. Peter's give you the questionnaire. Well, you know, I gave this gift on page 22. Over here on the Sears catalog, page 36, what you're going to be asked is not staying on. What you're going to be asked is, what did you do with Jesus? That's what we're all going to be asked. What did we do with Jesus? Amen. How will you answer? How will you answer? And one final suggestion, and it's really a side thought. Don't worry about getting caught up with the rapture. Don't worry about terms like pre- and post-tribulation.
Amen.
Or amillennialism, premillennialism, or postmillennialism. I practice to be able to say that. Don't get caught up in worrying about dispensationalism. Nobody knows about those things. Amen. What I want you to do today and the rest of the days of your life is get prepared for Jesus' second coming, and everything else, brothers and sisters, will fall into place. Amen. And remember, now is not the time to doze. In the name of the Father,